What are your thoughts on this case that Jay-Z is now trying to say, I have no parts in this?
Well, this is a huge week, Christina, in the Diddy case for several reasons. The first, of course, is we saw Jay-Z being named in a civil lawsuit. And the question is this just the first of many lawsuits against Jay-Z, or is this just a one-off isolated case, and will other celebrities be named? But also, for the first time, we saw two interviews by victims or alleged victims in the Diddy case. The first was to CNN, and now we have the who was a 13-year-old victim at the time, talked to NBC News about her case. And of course, she's alleging that she was sexually assaulted by both Diddy and Combs after the 2000 VMAs. And the challenge you have when you give these types of interviews is you can potentially say things that are untrue or inconsistent. And we're seeing some of those inconsistencies come out, things that may have been mistakes. And, look, I represent victims, and I can tell you that it's not uncommon to not recall something that happened 20 years ago. But it can potentially be a problem because we know Jay-Z and his lawyer have come out very aggressively. They've denied these allegations. They've said they're false. So sometimes jurors are put in a situation where they need to decide, is this just an innocent mistake or misrecollection, or is this a sign that someone's misrepresenting the truth and lying?
I'm glad you brought that up because some of those inconsistencies included her recalling that she spoke to another celebrity who wasn't at the party. They were actually on tour at the time. Also saying that her father came and picked her up from that location. The father said he doesn't recall coming to go pick her up on a night like that. Does that, like you just mentioned, the witness portion of this and how those in the jury are going to have to decide whether or not this is truthful or if this is not maybe the whole truth. Does that make it a lot harder when there are all of those inconsistencies, or there's certain inconsistencies that jurors tend to look past, knowing, again, you said this happened back in 2000. This was 24 years ago. So certain things aren't going to likely be remembered the way that you thought they were originally.
Well, certainly. I mean, I obviously would be concerned if I were Tony Busby about this particular case, because there are two really important inconsistencies that are tough to explain. The first is that celebrity that you mentioned, Benji Madden. And the victim here says that she had a conversation with him about his tattoos, very sort of detailed discussion. Well, it turns out that he was not in New York at the time, and he was touring in the Midwest. So he was nowhere near the place where this alleged assault happened. So that's number one. The second is the victim said that she was picked up by her father, and the victim lived in Rochester, New York. And of course, this all happened in New York City. You're talking about a 5-hour drive, and the father doesn't remember driving 5 hours to pick up his daughter. So that's certainly something that most people would probably remember if their daughter called them in the middle of the night and they had to drive that distance. So, Tony Busby came out and he said that the victim was willing to take a polygraph, a lie detector, and that it was referred by another firm who had done the vetting. And that's not something that I would have said. Ultimately, you're the lawyer. You're responsible for the allegations in the complaint. You want to make sure that they're accurate, especially in a case like this where you know that there's a very high likelihood that there's not going to be a settlement. Jay-Z's going to dig his heels in, call your client a liar. You want to make sure everything's buttoned up and accurate before you file a lawsuit in a high-profile case like this.
And even before I let you go, I have to ask you, do you think that this civil lawsuit is going to have any impact on Diddy's criminal case that's going on right now in New York?
Potentially, yes, if indeed there are credible allegations involving sexual assault of minors, especially if there's other celebrities involved. I'm sure federal agents and prosecutors are vetting through this because it will make the case against Diddy that much stronger. And of course, the law is intended to protect minor victims. And it really would cut out Diddy's main defense as well. Diddy's argued that the freak-offs happened, but it was all consensual. Obviously, minors can't consent, so it really puts Combs in a very tough position where he has to argue that the sexual contact didn't happen at all. But I think the feds are looking for the key types of evidence that I would if I were representing one of the Diddy victims, and that's a contemporaneous report and corroborating evidence. That's really what you want in a case like this. And it appears that the 13-year-old didn't tell anyone until recently. So the question is there any corroborating evidence? Are there witnesses who attended this after party? Can they corroborate what this victim is saying? I think that's going to be very important in a case like this.
And Jay-Z's lawyer came out this morning in a statement to USA Today, said true justice is coming. That was the words that he sort of left us with. Do you think that this is going to have any impact on his professional career at this point? Of course, Jay-Z has gone so far beyond where he started. He was originally a rapper out of New York City, got international fame, and now is a music mogul who runs several different businesses, including being a huge part of the NFL and producing the halftime show. So when you think about all of the things that he has going on for him, how do these civil lawsuits, do they end up impacting a person's business while they're ongoing, whether, of course, they have any validity to them or not?
It can absolutely impact Jay-Z's business. And so far, the NFL says their business relationship hasn't changed, but things can unravel pretty quickly. We saw that happen with Combs himself, where it was just the first domino. That's what I'm saying. Really, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks and months. Oftentimes, abusers don't just abuse one victim. So will this be a Me Too type situation where Jay-Z is going to be overwhelmed like Combs is? Or is this just going to be a one-off case that Jay-Z is going to be able to successfully defend? And, we've seen a lot of jabs in the media. I have respect for Tony Busby. He's a well-known plaintiff's lawyer. I have respect for Alex Spiro. I have cases against him right now and went to the same law school, Harvard Law School. But it has gotten nasty between the two, and it's going to be telling. Do witnesses come forward to support this woman's allegations? Are other victims, are they going to file lawsuits as well? Because look, jurors might not believe one victim, but when there's victim after victim telling the same story of physical and sexual violence, that's very difficult for jurors to disbelieve. And we've seen it time and time again in Hollywood. We have, Danny Masterson, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Jeff Epstein. I mean, there's too many names to mention, but oftentimes there is more than one victim. So I think that's going to be the key thing to determine whether Jay-Z gets out of this or he has similar problems to Sean Diddy Combs.
Attorney, again, Neama Rahmani here joining us to break down the very latest headlines as far as it relates to Sean Diddy Combs and Jay-Z. Thanks so much for your time here on this Saturday.
Thanks for having me, Christina.